Rachel, we've talked a couple of times on the podcast over the last few weeks about the absence, really, of the two big parties talking about what's going to be one of the biggest crises of the country, adequate social care. Ed Davey's talked about it. He's put out that very moving video. Wes Streeting seemed to show a little bit of leg on this on the Laura Kuenssberg programme on the BBC on the weekend. He said Labour would have wanted to be more ambitious. He paid tribute to Ed Davey and the Liberal Democrats, in fact. And he suggested that there could be more spending on health than that's outlined in the manifesto. But only if the plans for economic growth succeed. And he really did urge the other parties to work with Labour on this. I mean, it's really encouraging to see.
It is. And actually, Andrea Leadsom, I think this morning, said that she would be willing and prepared to work with a Labour government on health and social care kind of more generally. So I think there is understanding that healthcare reform and social care needs to be a cross-party issue. It's too big of a challenge to have the usual party politics of it. Although, again, much easier said than done. People have been calling for a cross-party approach to social care for decades. There is I'm not sure black hole is quite fair, but there is a noticeable gap in Labour's manifesto where concrete policy on social care perhaps might be. There's talk of a national care service. It's certainly talked about as being very important, but the actual steps for how to get there aren't really there. There are sort of talk on the waiting lists, yes, talk on the importance of preventative healthcare, yes, but it's kind of all ambition rather than concrete steps. And I don't think it's that surprising that Wes Streeting is, suggesting that more needs to be done. The problem is doing it. Any solution is going to be very unpopular with a lot of people, whether that's to do with how you fund it or how you reform the NHS or how you get the responsibility taken away from local councils onto central government, onto the individual. It's all very, very thorny. And once you start trying to hash out details, it all gets very unpopular. So the Labour strategy appears to be acknowledge that it's a challenge and they need to solve it, and they will solve it. And then they're going to have this very, very small window once they get into government where they have to put forward what the plans are. There's going to be a lot of criticism of whatever plans those are, and they're going to have to decide whether or not to push ahead and kind of take the criticism because it just needs to be done, or back away from the fight, in which case we'll still be in stalemate.
But immediately we saw perhaps why the parties don't want to talk about social care. No sooner had Wes Streeting hinted that there might be plans for this further down the line than Transport Secretary Mark Harper for the Conservatives said, Streeting's letting the cat out of the bag. Labour are going to be raising taxes. So you can see why. On that tax point, bit of a discussion going on today. Obviously, the Conservatives have been trying to say for weeks now that Labour are going to put up people's taxes. Am I right or am I wrong, or do we just not know whether John Ashworth this morning for Labour ruled out a re-evaluation of the council tax bans? Because this is something that lots of people have talked about might be possible as an extra way of raising money for a new Labour government.
This is a really interesting question. So as of the time of recording, we haven't had confirmation from Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves that is Labour Party policy to not reform council tax bans or the council tax system. We do know that being ruled out isn't in Labour's manifesto. They've obviously ruled out rises in income tax, national insurance and VAT. And as Beth Rigby so brilliantly pointed out in the Special Leaders TV event last week, not ruling something out in politician terms mean you might well end up doing it. Obviously, Ashworth did seem to rule it out, but that's not quite the same thing as it not being sort of explicitly ruled out of a manifesto. I think a lot of people are quite surprised by that because council tax really does need reforming, that it's based on valuations from 1991. It's really skewed in favour of people who have multi-million pound residences in wealthy parts of London, parts of Kensington and Chelsea pay lower council tax than other parts of the country where house prices are much, much, much lower. I mean, it's really quite laughable when you look at some of the examples, and it also disadvantages new build properties, which are often put in higher council tax bands. So that's disadvantaging young people as well. So there is a progressive social mobility, combating inequality argument for reforming council tax bands, as well as a revenue raising one. So I think it would be mad, really, for Labour to comprehensively rule that out at this stage, especially when they're so far ahead, and they don't need to. It's not like they are sort of fighting to get ahead, and they're worried that the Conservatives could spook the horses and win the election. That's not the position that we're in. But it did seem like that's what Ashworth was doing. So as of this moment, we don't know. It's all very curious.
We're at the stage of the campaign now. The manifestos are out. We're not going to get any new policy announcements. Labour this week are really trying to shift the focus onto the economy, putting Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, front and centre. Is that a conscious decision that now is the point to deploy her, if you like, in this campaign?
Deploy the Reeves.
Deploy the Reeves.
I think people who are interested in Labour putting forward Rachel Reeves should go back to last year's New Statesman left power list, where we made the, at the time, very controversial decision to put her at the top of it rather than Starmer. So Rachel Reeves has, for a long time, been absolutely integral in the strategy that Labour are pushing at the moment, particularly when it comes to reassuring businesses, but also kind of middle England, that they don't have to be scared of a potential Starmer government. And she is also obviously a very, very disciplined media performer. She doesn't slip up, although it's fair to say that none of the Labour top team do. I'm not sure if it's necessarily to do with her being more trusted. People sort of seem to be trusting Starmer just so much as they think that he's boring. So the scare tactics that the Conservatives have been trying haven't really been working. Labour have been using, Angela Rayner to give the campaign a bit of energy, a bit of personality, a bit of bite. She's obviously very punchy in those 7-way debates, and using Rachel Reeves as a kind of reminder that Labour are trying to be the grown-ups in the room, somebody that you could trust.
I can also reveal that Rachel Reeves is a big hit with children. When she appears on the radio, my children believe she sounds like Miss Rabbit from Peppa Pig. So there you go. Well, no disrespect meant to Rachel there, but that is hot off the press from our household.
I think she would hit that as a compliment.
Just to wrap up a couple of other things that happened over the weekend. So Theresa May set to move to the House of Lords. She's not really standing in this election, as we've known for some time, but she's set to receive a peerage.
That's very well deserved, actually.
Absolutely.
I didn't agree with virtually anything that Theresa May did as Prime Minister, but I think she has been a phenomenal public servant. She's really held the government to account from the backbenches, which is something that other high-profile Conservatives have chosen not to do when they lose their cabinet positions. And I think she would be a good addition to the House of Lords. I also saw that Alan Bate, the sub-postmaster, who we have to thank for blowing the whistle and his tireless work on Horizon and the post office scandal, he's got a knighthood in that honours list. And I think he should actually be promoted, as it were, to the House of Lords as well, because I think he would be an absolutely phenomenal post office minister from the House of Lords. So again, if
anyone should be Prime Minister.
I mean, I think he probably would make quite a good Prime Minister. If anyone from Labour listens to this podcast, which I hope all of them do, that's just an idea from me.
Agree with you wholeheartedly, both on Theresa May and being a really genuine public servant and obviously richly deserved knighthood for Alan Bate. And just finally, the awful news over the weekend from Rosie Duffield for Labour, who said that she can no longer take part in hustings because of threats that she has received from activists and feeling unsafe and not being able to provide adequate security. Now, it's an appalling state of affairs that any politician is in, and obviously that is increasingly the case for our public servants. News this morning, the Observer columnist Sonia Soda's reported, but it does seem to be widely reported now, that the Labour peer, Lord Cashman, who was a founder of Stonewall, he's had the whip withdrawn for his comments on that announcement from Rosie Duffield. He said, "Frit," meaning frightened, or just lazy. And Sir Keir Starmer has said that's completely unacceptable.
I think it is unacceptable, and I think we're going to have a much deeper conversation about the threats that MP face. Last week I was meeting the Labour candidate in Finchley and Golders Green, which is a constituency where the incumbent Tory MP Mike Freer is not standing again in this election after he received credible death threat and his office suffered an arson attack. And we were discussing, among other things, that that's just something you sign up for now. If you want to be a candidate or an MP, you're kind of signing up for the fact that your personal safety and your family safety could be at risk. And that is no way to run a democracy, and also risks putting off really decent, outstanding people who would be great MPs from ever wanting to have a go and go into it. So I think people, whether you agree with Rosie Duffield's position on anything or not, absolutely appalling and unacceptable that she doesn't feel safe turning up to speak at public events in her own constituency.
Agree. And across the board, it's completely unacceptable for any person running for public life to be subjected to abuse, and their families to be abused as well, whether you agree with their policies or not. And likewise, attacking people like Nigel Farage has faced in the last week or so is completely uncalled for as well, and unacceptable.